Hello again. We're live. It's the 5:55 p.m. coming up with Harry and his curated Facebook page. The discussions that we have every week. And you're fortunate this week because it is Harry himself. I took over for him last week, and yes, we all know why we miss Harry. So we're glad to have Harry back again. At this part of the show, I like to include the listeners in our open meeting for Autistic Association and Autistic Radio. The cliche is that there's a lot going on. There's rather too much going on at the moment, and people will be aware that we are a little bit behind with some of our podcasts from our regular live sessions or our 4 discussions. We will be catching up with that. Here in the UK, this time of year is tax time, and some of our members are rather busy. The big thing that happened this week, regular listeners will be aware of. Being an autistic person who occasionally puts themselves up as some kind of advocate and then pushes that further to be somebody who volunteers to enter a large behaviourist conference here in the UK and give them a piece of our minds, our collective minds, the different things that you have sent to me, to news at Autistic Radio, and the things that were immediately on my own mind as an individual. That's a big deal. It would appear that not many of the advocacy group are yet willing to take the role that is some kind of conciliatory role. And I don't blame them. I benefit from Stop the Shock. I benefit from Ban ABA. Because the background of protest that creates to not let people off the hook of the history and to keep it in the minds of the people who are trying to be more progressive going forward, that's a real tool in the tool bag of somebody when they go to speak to an organisation. It makes them desperate to find an alternative, and that's where we have them now. We have cooperation from some of the people within that organisation. So as long as everyone keeps the pressure up, then there's also avenues for change there. So I want to thank everybody out there who is openly and frankly discussing both the history of ABA and behaviourism, but also examining its current usage for the work that they're doing. You have gone before me, and I'm trying to pick up some of the threads behind you. We're not going to stop the discussion of ABA. It's not something that was just a fad or a temporary part. It was actually one of the intrinsic things that we decided to do as a group. I have to say there are differences with the ABA group from some of the other autism professionals that we have dealt with in the past. Because they, to some extent, are on the back foot, they're more receptive in some ways as well, which is an irony. In the past, we've been treated to a lot of tokenism by the so-called progressives. We found out recently that the so-called progressives had removed one of the presentations that we created for them from one of the conferences that we were invited to speak at, because the so-called progressives found what we say a little bit challenging, too near the bone, too truthful for them. That's where you are in advocacy. A lot of the time, you're banging your head against doors as they close. So if we have any kind of opening to speak to any kind of professional, we will take it. However easy it is for other organisations to use us cynically, we'll just keep our eyes open. We have a couple of podcasts coming up. We're going to be speaking this Tuesday as a group with a researcher from Ireland, part of the psychiatry faculty, and that follows on from a conversation we had with Aoife McTiernan. One of the conversations that has ignited interest because of its controversial nature amongst the ABA group. So this other researcher is going to talk about their research with the group, and if that goes well, we'll put that out of a podcast for you too. We have another podcast coming up, another recording coming up with a person who speaks against ABA because they have an alternative called floor time, an alternative to some of the things which we see as training that happens in different parts of the world. Floor time is something that is put out as a very child-centered, down on the floor, at eye level with the child level kind of support that isn't something that has caused controversy amongst those who know in autism what we should be looking for as best practice. And they're also speaking with somebody who has a long history of working to create an ABA school, but also is quite willing to talk out about their reservations about ABA. So that's a rather balanced conversation that we've got coming up to record with those two people. In general, we're not looking for many more voices to come back from the professions at the moment because we're consolidating what we want as autistic people. So if you're an autistic person who wants to come and speak, either on the subject of ABA or any other subject, then I would encourage you to take this time to come forward now, because we're going to be concentrating much more on the autistic voice over the next little while. So speaking to the members, many of whom are the officials of the charity themselves, has what I've been saying fitted what you're trying to achieve as a group? Am I on the right level? Can you give me some kind of indication that I'm not screwing it up?
I completely agree with the stuff that you're doing. Thanks for the update, Jules. Great work. I know there's been a lot happening and there's a lot to take on, so yeah, I'm very happy with the progress we're making and the direction we're taking.
I think the most important thing I need to ask people, is there anybody who is objecting to us having this dialogue with what an awful lot of autistic people see as the enemy? I know that's a rather childish way of looking at it because the world's more complicated than that. But is there anybody who is actually saying we should not be having this discussion, this open thing that we've been looking forward to? Well, look, as always, if you don't want to speak out now, I can see nothing in the text, but speak to me gently, speak to me quietly, and if I'm going in the wrong direction with this, I'm willing to shear it off and change in another direction. Harry, quite a serious meeting today. Let's welcome you back and say, what do we have in the 555, the Facebook conversation today?
Thank you, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 30th of March 2025, which is Mother's Day in the UK. And what we do is share the Facebook posts and create discussions from the posts, from the subjects that they put forward. So the first post, what I've shared, is the first post is from Robbie Prosser Music. It's part of our, regular tenders. Robbie Prosser Music, musician, who is an amateur musician, enjoyed playing music at open mics and music jams. And I've shared a post, which is part of the Facebook page that he's created, and it says, I am an amateur musician trying to improve my skills. I welcome constructive criticism. So I shared this because Robbie just shared it just at the 444 there, and I just thought it'd be a nice kind of this subject to kind of touch on. Something that because a lot of stuff we do is quite kind of I'm kind of rambling on a bit. Basically, I shared it because we like to promote people have got interests, art, music, poetry, etc. So it's part of that sort of approach that I've shared this. So what's people's thoughts on this? Anybody have anything to say on it?
I enjoyed visiting Robbie's site a couple of weeks back, and what I enjoyed about it was, or listening to the music, was the choice of material. There was some tunes there that I hadn't heard in a long time, and I was quite intrigued to hear played as well. A lot of seafaring type songs. Well, there wasn't a lot, but there was a few. But I just like that kind of songbook, and it's good to hear somebody playing that kind of music. So I enjoyed it a great deal.
What I like about Robbie's page and music in general is like music you feel I feel that when I listen to music, because I like music a lot, it's one of my favourite kind of pastimes is listening to music. And it feels sometimes good, sometimes not so good, depending on what mood you're in, as it kind of takes you somewhere, it takes you on a journey. And to see someone play it and be somewhere live or see someone play it doing the actual, it's fascinating to watch, it's fascinating to hear. And it's just great how things like this exist. Because you're that used to hearing all kinds of stuff. And it's just good that they exist, and it's good that there's opportunities for people to display that kind of stuff. So I haven't kind of listened to anything on Robbie's page as such. I've just put it up today, but it's good that stuff that's out there.
I'm just seeing that we've got some comments coming in from LinkedIn user. ABA has changed significantly over the years. However, I am not a supporter of ABA per se. I do believe in educating practitioners about the harm of the deficit model that is the basis for the practice. And then I appreciate any attempts to make ABA more humane and neuro-affirming. And I support having this discussion about ABA.
Thanks, Nicola. The next post is from Pandas Online, who's an author who's promoting acceptance of neurodivergence and support based in the UK. The website called Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws.co.uk. And what they've shared is about Mother's Day, which is happening today in the UK. because I know that Mother's Day differs all around the world. So it says, Happy Mother's Day to all the incredible mums, caregivers and safe adults out there. And a special shout out to those who have been called mum in meetings, emails, reports and waiting rooms, even when your name was known. We know it can feel like your identity disappears behind the title. You're a whole person who is advocating, navigating systems and making a difference. So today we are celebrating you, and your name is you. You matter too. Still waiting on those presents though. What's people's thoughts on this post?
It made me laugh. And it's because it's a humble brag. And I liked the technique of the poster using the way to say how they actually are seen as by a lot of the people as a mum, which is a hell of a title. If somebody is in their profession and other professionals are calling them the mum of the piece, they are elevating them in rather a lovely way. So, you know, if that's the truth of the situation, why shouldn't this person humble brag out there and say, you know, they are called mum by the professionals around them? And it's a good way of bringing it all round to the idea of care. The duty of care for young people, autistic or not, is rather like being a parent. And if you're doing a good job as a professional, and then other professionals will see you as some kind of quasi parent. They will see you in that super role that is mother. And going further out onto the idea of mothers, there's a lot of difficulties that the mothers of autistic people have that are unique to them. So if we as an elder group who often look as though we're in some way criticising the autistic mum, let's say right now as an organisation that we don't. We see the autistic mum as the hero of the piece, and in no way are the autistic population through Autistic Radio trying to do anything but support them.
I have heard that word being used for other people. No, mum, or I'm sure I've heard someone say, maybe my sister saying, my work mum, because it's someone in our work who's older and has more experience at the job. And it's done as an affectionate term, but also as respect. But she also calls an older friend, not that much older, but an older friend, ma. You know, the term that's used, the Scottish term that's used for mother. And it's because of their older and more experience and just the sort of older person of the friendship. And it's that term that means such a lot when people use that. If they're not talking about their own mother, their own mum, they're kind of using it as an affectionate term for people that have, you know, out of respect, out of love, out of friendship. And as a comment's been saying, mothering is a lot greater than normally perceived and shared mothering. So there is a lot of stuff, a lot of posts that we have shared from either autistic mothers or mothers of children with autism. And sometimes it may appear, as Jules says, that we're criticising some, but we're not. We're just reading out and giving a perception. Because when we do read those things out, it's like a long conversation where we're thinking while we're speaking. like we're taking it, how does that look at first? And then you read it again and you think about it, and all the different people in the room is talking and giving their own views. It all kind of works out to make sense in a grander scale because there's more than one person thinking and talking about it. So there's definitely no criticism. There's difference of views sometimes, etc. Certainly no criticism. It's such a strong word, mum. That word alone, mother, mum, mummy, mammy, as I call my own mother. It's just such a powerful word and a powerful description to give to someone who may not be your actual mother. And yes, Mother's Day is also called Mothering Sunday sometimes as well. The next post is from Neurodivergent Girl, which is a personal blog from married mama of 2 boys, diagnosed ADHD and autistic, low support needs. This is a safe space. And what they've done is they've shared what they say is the message is so simple, yet it gets forgotten. And what it says, it's from Michael J. Fox, the actor, and who has Parkinson. I nearly said Michael Parkinson there. I did say that line. Michael J. Fox, who has Parkinson's and campaigns for Parkinson's. And what he said is, the message is so simple, yet it gets forgotten. The people living with the condition are the experts. What's people's thoughts on that particular quote? In relation to autism, the way I kind of seen it is, we've said it all before, there's people that are workers, professionals in the field of autism, and they learn things and they study things over years. Sometimes it can even be, scientific, as well as social and mental and medical. And they're so-called experts in the field. But it gets forgotten, as the quote says, that people who are autistic, who identify, who feel they're diagnosed, they feel that they have the condition, whatever the way they want to call it, and you're living it, you're living that life in your own way, that you're the expert, and people shouldn't be telling you that they know more about you and your condition and your identity more than you do. And I feel that gets said and gets done far too often, and it has done in the past because of this authority and power kind of structure. So that's why I added it today. What's other thoughts?
Well, I see that somebody in the private chat here has put down that it is a very important message. I'm going to switch it about a bit because I like to remind the professionals that there are no experts in autism. That autism is such a open field, open to interpretation, so dynamic that they are constantly out of date, and the word expert doesn't apply. It's not fixed enough to be an expert. At the moment, the only idea that goes around an expert is somebody who has really tried to think about it an awful lot and struggled with the problems. So it also means I have to say, we're autistic, lived experience expert. I get the concept, I get the idea behind it, but that final word of expert still applies to us as well, because we can't yet reach the totality of expert, because there's still so much for us. My experience of autism is very different from many other people's experience of autism, and it would embarrass me if somebody in any way described me as lived experience expert. I'm a lived experience expert of my version of autism and what it's like to be me, but I still get other people from the outside explaining me to me and me understanding that in a different way. So maybe I'm not even an expert about my own self. There's a humility there needs to be throughout the profession and also throughout the advocates, that autism is such an open thing that we need to keep that conversation going and keep it in flux, in play, so we can all add new things to it that we all realise and discover.
The next post, before we move on, there's a comment saying from LinkedIn user, I agree, I don't like being called an expert. I'm still learning about my autism and my son's autism. And there has been experience from some people about being talked over a lot by so-called professionals and experts, being put down. And yep, I've seen that happen. It's been done to me. It's like, but I know more than you because that's my job or that's my qualification. So it's that power structure thing, that hierarchy thing that lingers around. Well, I say linger, it doesn't linger, it's in your face, I suppose. But as Jules has already said about, sometimes you're not even the expert of your own autism, but you're more of an expert than a professional is. Yeah. The word expert removes humility because too often experts cut off avenues of learning if those avenues don't meet their expectations. What's other people's thoughts on these comments? The next post is from National Autistic Society, and it's a report launch called Empower Autistic Travel, and there's a full report on this based in the UK. I'm not going to read the full report, but what it is, it says it's empowering autistic travel. The National Autistic Society's research team carried out a year-long research project about travel for autistic adults. The aim of the research, which began in April 2024, was an in-depth exploration of autistic people's experiences of travel and transport to gain a better understanding of barriers to comfortable, safe travel, the impact those barriers cause, and possible solutions to make services more accessible and autism-friendly. The research question was, how can we address the most significant challenges experienced by autistic adults using trains, buses, taxis, and similar forms of transport in the UK? And they continue by saying, we know that this is an important topic for many autistic people. Yet we found a distinct lack of quality research addressing this. And they've got all kinds of, they've got research overview and full report. But what they say is, we wanted to capture the experiences of as many autistic people as possible. We were also keen to hear from parents and carers and friends and family members of autistic people. It was essential to work closely with transport providers too. Throughout the project, we gained a lot of insight through surveys, interviews, focus groups, and workshops. We worked with a co-design group of autistic people who we consulted with at each stage of the project. The group helped to steer the project, make decisions, review draft documents, and prioritise. And the project has been made possible thanks to generous funding from the Motability Foundation. And the Motability Foundation funds, supports, researches, and innovates so that all disabled people can make the journeys they choose. So it's basically on the topic that we've talked about before, about travel and how it impacts autistic people. So what's people's views on this particular work and research?
I got slightly interrupted at the end because I was interested in hearing if they came to any conclusions in their research, or if it's still ongoing. I'm not sure if you said already, Harry.
No, I was just giving an overview. I didn't actually go into the report because it probably takes some time to do. So, but I never said any findings on the introduction, so I'm unsure. It's interesting to know though what their conclusions would be.
I have actually followed a bit deeper in, and some links on that post take you to the autism.org.uk National Autistic site, and you end up on a page called Advice and Guidance, Topics, Leisure and Going Out. So they created, the report appears to have created some advice centres on going to the theatre, playing sport, going on holiday, going to museums, Christmas, bonfire night and fireworks, and going to the cinema. And if you pick any one of those, there's tips. Some of them go back to 2020. So I'm not entirely sure whether the website has been updated with the research. Let's be a bit franker about this, shall we, from the way of autistic radio goes. The voice you just heard was Nicola, and Nicola has been interviewing me for a podcast series, Mumbai to Goa by train. So the idea that autistic people are entirely held back from travelling and using public transport needs to be tempered with the idea that yes, we can, we just need helping and enabling. So at one side we've got podcasts saying this is an autistic person speaking to another autistic person about experiences where they travel the world, and then we've got an autism organisation that is also at the other end of things, almost embedding the idea that we are too disabled to travel, and the reality lies somewhere in between, I'm guessing.
Who did we think that was aimed at, this National Autistic Society project? Because it's really quite alienating. It seems very academic, and so I'm assuming it's aimed at those communities, because I find, like, I just give up after a couple of paragraphs when they get as large as this.
I think from what I've seen, I think I've actually posted a similar post further down, because I opened another page, which was from someone else, regarding the same thing. And I had the approach, it was regarding more about learning disability aspect of autism, I think, or people with a learning disability and autism. But then it's a National Autistic Society, so I'm unsure. So I think there's a bit of that to it, and that's why it's probably presented in a certain way. And that's why it's probably limited the sort of scope. Because we know that the autism, Jules has just given a great example. Jules has travelled the world, certainly a large part of it, and given podcasts from Nicola has been done about that, and it's a lot of stuff has been talked about on even this particular podcast as well, these live broadcasts. So I think that's why things are worded the way they're worded. But I'm unsure, but it does seem that certainly organisations and charities, when they're describing something relating to autism, it always seems very limiting in how they're describing it and how they're approaching it, which kind of goes against the grain of many autistic people.
I took part in a survey a couple of months back related to transport and travel that was circulating amongst people. I think I got it from Morris. They took my details, called me up, had a Zoom chat for an hour, got 40 quid voucher for Sainsbury's.
I feel like I'm just being a bit like obtuse here, but like surely like the biggest challenges to autistic travel are like service failures, schedule changes, service changes, and bad smells, that kind of thing. It's like surely just improve the public service network and everybody will get on a bit better and save your money and on your research.
Yeah, it's coming back now. It was Sustrans who got in touch with me for the thing I was involved with, which may be more particularly local.
I mean, as Robbie said before, you're right, Nicola, it's about the service and about how it's run, about the scheduling, about the times and when they provide the service. I mean, as I've said before, I mean, you could want to go somewhere, and if the time of the bus or the transport, train or whatever is cut off early, it's like you could be stranded somewhere, as Robbie has said. I mean, you're right. A lot of this seems simple enough. Improve the service and things will be a lot better. But then again, a lot of the barriers in my autism in public transport is the noise. And not just that, it's about layout of the actual vehicles. Like, for instance, I don't use it often, but the Glasgow Underground, when I did use it on a regular basis, because the way the vehicles are made, the way they're set up, it's like you're facing to somebody else on the other side of the train. And that was so uncomfortable. And some trains feel like that. When I go on a train, I always go somewhere where it's just two seats on its own, so I don't face anyone. Unless it's someone I know, that's different. It's just like the structure of things, the way that and just the systems. I mean, they're actually they're curtailing ticket offices, train ticket offices, and then you have to use the machine, and then so there's that lack of. It's just like all you seem to see is things getting curtailed and things are made worse, and I know that's down to money, etc. But that's what autistic people want, or a lot do, is just make the service better and more adaptable, more affordable, and certainly not smelly. And the thing about machines, the ticket machines at railway stations now, they may come in handy in a lot of ways. They're actually a hindrance in a lot of ways. Like, they don't do concessions for a start because they can't. And I actually wouldn't, I think it must have been a period where I didn't have a concession pass. I actually tried to use one of the machines. And I found it complicated. Someone actually had to show me. Even the instructions on the thing itself didn't seem clear enough. So there's things like that as well. Like, things are getting more automated. Things are getting more, you're not dealing with people. Even though dealing with people is a hard thing, but it's easier sometimes when you're dealing with a service, like a train conductor or bus driver even, than a machine itself, because a machine, you can't reason with a machine if it goes wrong. And that's just another stress factor. The next post is from Pete Warnby, autistic author, autistic and ADHD writer and speaker on autism and autistic lived experience. And what's shared is about a book from Niamh Garvey called Wired Our Own Way. And he says, I loved every page of this collection of Irish voices. Anthologies in the realm of neurodiversity are naturally very powerful, for obvious reasons, and this is one of the best I've read. Many thanks to Niamh Garvey for putting this together, and all the contributors who added their stories. So it's collated. It's edited by Niamh Garvey, and it's collated by all different people about the autistic experience. So it's an anthology of Irish autistic voices. Does anyone read this book? Anybody know this book?
No, but
No.
it sounds interesting.
Sorry. No, but it's being publicized by somebody that has a lot of respect in the community. So it's almost as though you can take it from the fact that Pete Warnby is putting it out there that it has value.
The thing I like about these books, although I don't read many of them, but I do see the stories that have been shared that are included in them. People's experiences, people's it's like stories that can inspire and lift people. There's ones that go deep and talk about certain things. It's quite intense, like a lot of our conversations can be based on some posts, and it all makes sense, and it'd be a worthwhile read. I mean, it's great that these books exist, and it's good that it's all these different perspectives and contributors involved in this particular book. So it'll give all different kinds of experience rather than just one, which goes down into a stereotype, by other people's outlook. So it's good to see these books existing. The next post is from the Autistic Poet, and this is where I was relating to something else that was about public transport. And it's about the same thing. and it was shared by Learning Disability today. So I think I'll just share it because it kind of relates to a previous topic we've been discussing, a very pressing one. And it's done by Alison Bloomer, who is editor of Disability. Say that again. It's edited by Alison Bloomer, who is editor of Learning Disability Today. She has over 25 years of experience writing for medical journals and trade publications. Subjects include healthcare, pharmaceuticals, disability, insurance, stock market, and emerging technologies. She's also a mother to a gorgeous 13-year-old boy who has a learning disability. And what she shared is about a new report highlights how problematic independent travel is for some autistic people. And it says that nearly 2/3 of autistic people experience distressed behaviour or sensory overload when they travel on public transport, according to a new report from the National Autistic Society. The year-long project, funded by the Motability Foundation, aimed to understand the barriers autistic people face when they travel and make recommendations to make transport services more accessible and more autism-friendly. It found that nearly 9 in 10, 87%, autistic people experience sensory discomfort or overload on public transport, and over 4 in 5, 81%, feel anxious or unsafe outside the home or in public. Autistic respondents reported that barriers to travel included being anxious about travel even before their journey starts, 71%. Distressed behaviour or sensory overload while travelling or when reaching their destination, 62%. Worrying about getting to medical appointments easy and on time, 52%. And missing out on accessing hobbies and interests, 46%. The report also highlights the challenges autistic people experience on trains, buses, taxis, and ride shares, including feeling anxious or unsafe outside the home in public, 81%. Strangers being close or seated beside them, 86%. Unexpected delays and cancellations, 85%. And feeling rushed by others, 76%. Everyday challenges that autistic face when travelling. Dr. Judith Brown, Head of Autism Knowledge and Expertise at the National Autistic Society, said, "These findings really highlight the everyday challenges that autistic people face. Thousands of autistic people have told us that independent travel is either hugely problematic or impossible. With changes to the environment and improved informations, journeys would be more predictable and comfortable. With better recognition, understanding and empathy towards autistic people from transport professionals and the general public, journeys will feel far safer." There are some fantastic examples of good practice and transport support available. We need to expand on these and, even more importantly, create societal change in attitudes towards difference. By working together to understand challenges for autistic people and facilitate positive change, autistic people can make comfortable journeys and improve their quality of life. The report includes recommendations for the transport industry and the public to help create a society that works for autistic people, including improved support includes easily recognisable dedicated support staff and support points at stations. Accessible information such as clear signs, maps, visual instructions, and advance notice of any changes. Sensory adaptation such as quiet spaces, sensory regulation tools, including ear defenders and information on screens, as well as audio announcements. Training for all staff to improve understanding of autism. Training for all staff to improve understanding of autism. Improve planning and advance notice of any changes. Chelsea Fleming, Innovation Manager at the Motability Foundation, added, We are proud to have grant-funded this research from the National Autistic Society on the challenges autistic people face when making journeys. Importantly, this research focuses on the lived experience of autistic people to illustrate the issues they face when travelling and makes recommendations for improvement. User research like this, led by organisations and people with a deep understanding of the issues, is vital to unlocking accessible travel for all. So with that added to the conversation, what's people's comments?
Someone in the chat saying this is me, city life is just too intense, and I really relate to that as well. Like, traveling just takes so, like, on the daily sort of travel that I do, just takes so much of my energy. I feel like I could manage so much more if I was just having a wee walk between places. And when I was younger, I used to end up walking ridiculous miles to avoid having to be on public transport and stuff, or cycle them. Like, I hate it, and I hate driving as well, even though I can drive. Yeah, I just don't. I feel like, if you move your house plants around the house, it's not good for them. Plants like to stay in one place, and I feel a little bit like that myself, slightly ent like.
Yeah, there's not much within walking distance anymore. And this is this definition of the word travel. They're using it in this context to get you from A to B in order to function as a person within a society. So we used to have local banks and local everything nearby within walking distance, or maybe even cycling distance if you want to get into using that tool. And they're all gone now, so you really have to plan a major journey to another part of the city. And I agree with Nicola there about driving. I drive. I've got a license, but I hardly use my car. It's only there for emergencies. And even then, I live by a main road, and it is intense out there. And it's just overwhelming to me now. Maybe I'm just older and more tired, but I have to think twice about going out, whether I'm up to it, whether it's safe. And if they do any roadworks here, I just avoid it, because if it's single lane, I can't stand sitting in traffic. And it's not impatience, it's utter panic. So I wish it was within walking distance, a lot of things, because walking's great. But I don't know about this adaptation thing about, creating all these things that help you survive it. It feels like a cop-out to a certain extent.
I think it's about being accommodating to as many people as possible. And it's a very hard thing to do. But sometimes there's just a lack of understanding. And as Robbie has said as well, it's like, it's not just about we already said, it's not just about how things are run in terms of the setup of it. It's about the scheduling of it. It's about availability of it. Like, and that goes beyond autism. I mean, like bus services, for instance, it's like you want to go somewhere and you can't because they don't provide it at a certain time of day or a certain time of night. And that's excluding people. And that's why there's campaigns out there, in fairness, to try and change in how public transport is actually run. Because at the moment, most of it in the UK is run to make profit. And if it doesn't make profit, they don't run it. But public transport, in many people's opinion, including mine, shouldn't be done to make profit. because somebody without a car, someone without their own transport, I feel is entitled to some kind of public transport to be available. I know it can't be available all the time, but it should be available, reasonably, well. And it's just frustrating that many people feel kind of stranded because they haven't got the service that's needed. And then you've got even because of things are done by money as well, the standard of it is pretty poor. Like, it's noisy buses or noisy trains. Some are very old and smelly, and obviously there's this sensory thing about smells. Sometimes the lighting can be too bright. It can be, it's all sorts of things. When I travel, I need to have, it said that it's included in the report and the article that's read about ear defenders. My ear defenders is basically kind of, listen to music. And I need to do that now, even though there was a time in my life I didn't. But see, if I don't do it now because I'm not used to it, it's quite intense sitting on a bus or a train without it because all these background noises, even they don't need to be that loud, they just need to just be there. It can just be people talking quite quietly, and they could be far down the other carriage or wherever I am, and you can still hear this sort of wee noise, and it's just quite annoying. It's just because you're used to, because the senses is quite, it's strong, and it's just so sensitive to so many things like noise and smells and stuff. So there's a lot to take in, and it's just sometimes when these sort of reports come out, it's like they're adapting because they feel sorry. Or that seems to be the sort of approach. It shouldn't be. It's just doing the right thing for everybody. Make sure that everybody is accommodated, or as many people as possible is accommodated. That's the right thing to do.
I think somebody who took the time to write a long comment on this probably takes that whole report and concertinas it into one long paragraph. They say, I struggle with using buses. I struggle with being in crowded spaces when I'm not occupied. I struggle with planning a journey that requires more than one bus. I struggle with a 24-hour clock. Lack of timetable at bus stops is also a problem. I find my way around visually, so would struggle to know where to get off. I'm anxious about when to get off on a return journey. I'm frightened of getting stranded. I have no way to get back if I miss the last bus. I cannot and do not use phones because I can't cope with the demands and unpredictability of the phone calls. Therefore, I cannot use a taxi. Even if I could, I'd be concerned that they would not take cash or exploit me by not taking the quickest route. I'm concerned about asking for help, as I may be harmed if I have an autistic meltdown. Buses are expensive and not available evenings or Sundays where I live. So, if they'd just asked that one person, I think they would have probably been able to frame their research just through that experience.
Yeah, it's all relatable. Absolutely. The one thing that I don't like to use is taxis. I just feel that taxis just feels too close. It's like someone is taking, it's like it is a stranger coming to take you somewhere in a car. Sometimes the drivers are quiet and they get on with it. Some of them it's just they want to talk to you about their life. They want you to talk about your life and your day, and you've got to get in this big conversation, and you feel ignorant if you don't. And that's part of the reason I don't get taxis in general. Like, for instance, when I used to go to the pub, 10 minutes walk from my house, But it was late at night, and everybody who'd live kind of further away, like 5 minutes away, they generally get taxis. I was the only person that never seemed to do that because I'm not comfortable with that. Nothing to do with the money. It's just that, especially if I've been drinking, I just felt vulnerable. And I'd get 100 questions in the taxi. How was your night? How much you drank? And I was like, oh, do I talk to anybody? I'm doing what I want. I want to go home. And it's quite strange because sometimes when you go into public transport, it feels so impersonal, and that feels like it goes the other way. But sometimes when you get into taxis, it seems so invasive. I feel I'm being unfair to the. I mean, most of the time they're not being bad. It's just talking about how I feel. But yeah, one people experience can give a whole wealth of information on what's wrong with public transport as a whole and how it doesn't adapt and how it isn't accessible to people. The next post is from Brightfire CIC. And they're a non-profit organisation. Mental health services for autistics and ADHDers, diagnosed or self-identified clients welcome. And they've shared a picture of someone cuddling a dog. And it basically says, dog hugs are self-care. And we've talked about this a lot, about not just assistance dogs, but people having dogs and how beneficial it is for many autistic people. What's other people's thoughts on this?
I feel a bit stuck about this one because I've read something recently that says like lots of dogs find hugs quite stressful. And I think it's like, yeah, like I feel like I've got a dog, she's like turning 1 and I'm kind of just still learning about her, like learning what she likes and stuff. And she's like pretty affectionate. It's quite nice. And I'm just like, yeah, I think that you get your own sort of language with your dog. You make your own connection and stuff. And it's like any relationship. It's like don't do stuff that annoys them and vice versa, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a wee dance. You've got to listen and be aware and respect. There's an awful lot of emotion in these kind of posts because it's a loving relationship with a pet. So yeah, it's positive, but there are shadows to it, you know. Yeah, I won't go into this.
Yeah, I like dogs. I mean, I wouldn't have a dog, as I've said before, but nothing to do with dogs. It's just more my life, the way I do my, my routines, etc. And always like to come into contact with my sister's dog. Well, it's not my sister's dog; it's actually my niece's dog. And when I went down to my mum's today, they were in, and just walking in the door and seeing the dog excited to see you. It's just a nice wee feeling, like, oh, it's just, who's this? And it was just a nice wee feeling. So it must be good when it's more intimate and that it's your own dog and it's like that relationship there. Because I've been around dogs that have been mistreated. There was one time, a long time ago, that someone was looking after a dog. It was like they weren't going to stay. It's like they were staying for a while temporarily before the dog be taken to with someone else because the dog was mistreated by someone. And what sticks in my head is anytime someone moved, the dog panicked and jumped back like it was going to be hit, because that's what's happened to the dog. And it kind of sticks in my mind, how can someone do that and all that kind of thing. But it just shows you, how careful you need to be around dogs, because dogs don't forget. The next post is from Embrace-Autism, which is a mental health service, science website and diagnostics centre. Research-based information and empowerment by autistics for autistics. Embrace your advantages. And what it's about is about autistic burnout. And it's part of a series called 16 Days of Autistic Burnout Tips. And it's day 2, tip 2. And it says, autistic burnout is a serious but often misunderstood experience. So over the next 15 days, I'll be sharing powerful and practical tips straight from the ultimate guide to autistic burnout. This book, written by autistic authors with lived experience, provides essential strategies for recognising, recovering from, and preventing burnout. Whether you're currently struggling or want to learn how to support autistic loved ones, these daily tips will offer real, actionable advice. And it provides the link below. But one of the tips that's being shared today from Ali Anderson's Autistic Burnout is that you can still be successful while also honouring your unique needs with proper accommodations. Meaning, resting isn't failure. I'm taking from that. Because burnout, in my experience, comes from trying too hard, because if you stop, you're failing to complete a task or failing to do something. And that in itself burns you out quicker because you're too busy worrying about it, and you just you keep yourself going until you burn out altogether. What's other people's thoughts on this particular post?
What is the term for that feeling of exhaustion that just gradually creeps up on you?
I'm not sure. Burnout is when it completely happens, I suppose. There is a word, but I can't think of it at the moment. It's good to know, or good to see, or recognise the signs that it's coming. And it's good to, look at tips and read advice. Oh, well, it's not always good. It depends who's giving the advice. It's about looking after yourself. I think in general, life is stressful. It's just things are hustle and bustle. You must do this, you must do that, and there's all these things you are being told you must do because you have to, because that's the way things are. And it's just trying to, especially from a autistic perspective, when you've riled yourself up to complete something, because I'm a kind of person that feels that I need to complete the task that I've planned. Although I've become more disciplined in terms of not doing too much at once, and maybe do it over a period of days. It's sometimes things like housework. I remember actually sitting thinking, I need to hoover. I need to, polish. I need to tidy things up a little bit because it's annoying me. And I can remember actually spending days actually getting that wound up without actually doing anything because it was stressing me out and burning me out even just thinking about doing it. But then when you actually do it and even when it's not complete, and you're doing it gradually because you've managed to kind of discipline to do things gradually, take your time, it's actually beneficial. That's kind of one example of potential burnout. Life is stressful, Raymond. Life is stressful. Doesn't have to be, but it can be. Sometimes I think I like the stress. Seem to thrive on it.
Mr. Motivator.
I mean, I say all this, but I get myself that involved in many things. And I think a lot of that is my attention span. I always need something else to do. And then that can lead to burnout because I've given myself too much to do, although I've kind of learned not to do that too much. So it's quite weird how to balance all that, even though while saying all this, I managed to do so in most cases. It's good to get all these advice and things, shared. Because some people just don't realise that these sort of things can be managed.
I'm wondering how much of that might be ADHD, because I've got no knowledge of ADHD. Because apparently my diagnosis, I did not have ADHD. But when they talk about, or as you're talking about, wanting to do a lot of things and maybe not giving yourself a rest at times, I wonder if that's necessarily autistic. Because my kind of core personality is I can't be arsed. I'd rather do practically nothing. So there's all these variations.
Sometimes, as my comment shared, I think I have reached burnout, but the demands won't go away. And that'll be a situation a lot of people will be feeling as well. I could totally understand that. It's like the burnout's there, but the demands or things that feel need to be done or things that are going against you need to be done is still there and you can't get away from it, which really impacts on people's health. The next post is from Neurodivergent Girl again. I try not to repeat them, but sometimes it can't be helped. So it's by Neurodivergent Girl, personal blog, married mum of 2 boys, diagnosed ADHD and autistic, low support needs. This is a safe space. And what I've shared is about autism and ADHD. And it's shared from Remarkably Unique Speech and Language Therapy. And what it says is autism and ADHD diagnoses are not trendy. They are not taboo. They are not an excuse. They're neurotypes. A diagnosis describes how someone's brain functions. And frankly, I don't think an individual's brain type should be subject to public debate and scrutiny. What's people's thoughts on that?
So this post, I think, is asking people not to be nosy about someone's diagnosis. Is that correct? Whereas it's okay to get one because it describes how your brain functions. It's a neurotype statement. But people talking about it or discussing it, putting it in public debate and scrutiny is not on. Is that a correct interpretation of this?
I wouldn't put it quite like that, Raymond. I think the intention behind the meme is that at the moment there's particularly people of the boomer generation, they might dismiss people by saying ADHD diagnosis in your kids or your grandkids is just a trendy thing. It's just people jumping on a bandwagon and denying the existence. Then the same kind of group of people often kind of look from their own experience, which doesn't include any of these things, and then they see kids and they see kids as asking for an excuse, and parents excusing on behalf, and they speak against it, and it upsets people. So I think this person's trying to call out and say these Daily Mail ideas, these Trumpian ideas, these anti-woke ideas that are out there, they're just plain wrong. People aren't excusing themselves, and they're not making up a diagnosis because it's trendy to be on a bandwagon. It's not something that should be seen as taboo, like you say. That's the part that I think you're expressing. So it's a bit more. It's kind of like saying, at the moment in society there is a pushback against what we know to be the reality of the neurodiversity paradigm. And like global warming, there are still plenty of people out there that don't accept the climate crisis. There are still plenty of people that hurt other people by saying that we're excusing ourselves, we're just being trendy, and it should be taboo to be behind closed doors as a mental illness.
It does seem, and Facebook's full of it, not just Facebook, but Facebook's one area where you see a lot where, because of the modern way is different from what it was like in the past, so many people think it's wrong. Like, if someone who's autistic had struggled in the past, but they just got on with it and somehow they managed it, they seem to feel that other people shouldn't be helped because they weren't helped or they did need the help. It's like this sort of kind of macho attitude, particularly in men. It's like, oh, man up or be stronger. We were hardy people back in the day, and people today are too soft. They can't cope with anything. And they're coming up with all these kind of trendy names and excuses and identities, etc., to make an excuse for not doing what should be done according to these people. And people keep saying as well as how things in the past, even people at my age, which I find quite, in many ways, hilarious, because they said the same about, their mothers and fathers who used to kind of come out with what I called old fart nonsense, meaning people just, it's like they ridicule the current generation, saying that that's not the way we were brought up is the way. And there's people at my age were born in the 80s, and they would say, oh, back in the 80s and 90s, it was, things were more simpler. People, you knew who people were. Life wasn't complicated. You knew where you are. Things were fine. But these days, people complicate everything, and they've created this much a mess in society. These people want special treatment, including people with autism. they've just muddied the waters and they've created a mess. They don't talk about the injustices and all that, etc. They just say they've caused a mess and look what the state of the world is in because of you. And that just infuriates me and makes me laugh at the same time because of how pathetic it sounds and how pathetic it reads. And it's just very frustrating and how that impacts a lot of people very negatively because people take that in quite literally because a lot of autistic people take things literally. So it just, these messages, these memes are very important for people to take in, but not everybody will listen, but it's good for people to see that that message is out there to support people. The next post, which may be the final post, is from Neurodivergent Lou, who's a blogger finding a place in a neurotypical world. And they've shared a presentation, which I won't go through completely, but I'll go through, I'll summarise it. And it's called 7 Ways Not to Respond to an Autistic Meltdown and What to Do Instead. And number 1 is, during an autistic meltdown, it is not the time to tell someone off. Number 2, during an autistic meltdown, it is usually best not to ignore the person. Number 3, during an autistic meltdown, do not take away items used to regulate. Number 4, during an autistic meltdown, don't try to rationalise or bargain with the person. Number 5, during an autistic meltdown, don't shame someone or tell them how they should act. Number 6, during an autistic meltdown, don't touch the person unless agreed. And during an autistic meltdown, don't forget your own needs. What's people's thoughts on this post? And does anybody identify with them? The reason I've shared it is because when things like this happen, so many things happen that really goes against the grain and makes their situation worse. I mean, like it says, you know, people getting told off for behaving in a way that's not proper, out of order, misbehaving, etc. And sometimes when people are having a meltdown, people that are around you try to help you tend to actually sometimes talk to each other rather than actually talk to you. Oh, what we do, he's no well. And that can be infuriating. That's what I'm taking from number 2. And it's just like, there's all these different things about, don't be, patronising. Don't be authoritative. The best thing to do is just try and be helpful. and understanding. I know it's actually not that easy, but it's better than, I mean, for one thing you shouldn't do is give someone a row for being unwell, which I think happens to a lot of people, particularly children.
I was writing there in the text, how does this apply to an adult or someone who's late diagnosed? Because I can remember back in my 40s and certain temp jobs that I had, that some of the situations I was having where I would need a break or sometimes even just walk out, may have been meltdowns. There's a lot of stressful factors involved, like domestic and tiredness and lack of sleep and lack of communication at work, but it was often and also using public transport, where again it would be like jump off the bus and then you're late and all that stuff. So I suppose a meltdown is a lot more serious though, where you're in need of some kind of care. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just thinking about that just now, meltdown in relation to me is I'm thinking of a panic attack, because it's just everything's just, it's just too much taken on. So it's like a panic attack, and it seems like an attack. Yes, can also be a rage as well, because yeah, that's right. So yeah, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here.
We can all get a wee bit comical about, when we get annoyed with certain things and people, how we will go off into little strops and tantrums. That's me using polite words. So I put that word rage in there because that's quite an extreme form of that. That's when like you're almost uncontrollable. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, and I can see how that can happen. I don't know if I've done that. I probably have. I'll just keep thinking of panic attacks as such, but there must be times where I just roared, maybe slammed something down or had a right good shout at someone. It must have happened, because I'm very irritable. But it's not just me being irritable. Sometimes other people have been unreasonable to you, and it just creates this sort of kind of situation. So it's different people.
I like what you say about the situation because, yeah, we kind of make it by accepting it. And sometimes panic and rage can be two sides of the same coin. When you're in a real panic, you can maybe get a wee bit aggressive if you're not allowed or able to escape, to improve the situation, to be somewhere else. The worst panic attacks I've had are in locked rooms, public events. It's like, getting out itself seems like it would be an extreme effort and a hassle for everyone concerned. And so when it comes to it, you end up causing a bit of a fuss. Do you see what I mean?
I'd say the word has colloquial meanings as well as something that's probably quite specific somewhere. I try to reserve the use of the word for a period when my emotions are out of my control. My behavior, my actions are out of my control. I've lost the ability to communicate. So I melted down to such a degree that I can't do a lot about what's happening. Now, I'd have to say I don't experience that in my life as an adult now in the same way that I can relate to experiencing it when I was maybe teenage or younger, though it has happened. Rage has been part of it. We use the word colloquially to say something was overwhelming. And we might even say I had a mini meltdown, or I want to avoid a meltdown. That's just us using language. That's just people using language, and we should be allowed to use a big word like that. Even though, people use a big word like awesome to describe a sandwich, when the real idea of awesome is you are in such awe from the experience that you are bowed down by it. You are in awe. And however good a sandwich is, I really don't think a sandwich can reach that level of awe. But what it can do in a colloquial sense is it be part of our society. So if you use it in a certain intonation, it's fine. We need to be cautious sometimes about using words inappropriately, but we also need to accept that words in different places have their own nuance.
It's kind of weird, this, because when we're talking about, just going through the descriptions there about, when Raymond was talking about feeling enclosed in a room, it kind of goes back to the public transport thing when I'm travelling to Glasgow sometimes. And when the train gets busy, and because of the station I go to, there's like a station where everybody goes off and then everybody piles on. And then I'm only going off maybe at a station or two after it. And I'm feeling, how am I going to push by all these people politely? Because sometimes people just push on and push on, just to get on the train, so they can. It might only be just for one stop, but they don't want to wait a wee bit longer. It's just people are always in a rush, and I can feel myself getting frustrated and anxious and angry. I'm angry because people keep pushing on when it's obvious that it's busy, and pushing on is just going to make it uncomfortable for everybody, including the people themselves, I would imagine. And I'm also raging because the train won't move and people are able to keep coming on. So it's like, but then for some reason I managed to calm myself down and be reasonable. So that's probably one way how a meltdown can happen, in situations where it just blasts out the rage and anger, as well as pouring out of emotion like crying and wailing. So there's another experience.
I'm not even going to get into the whole idea of neighbourly disputes.
I've been there, Raymond. I've been there. So this has us come to the end of another good conversation. What's wrong with me tonight? I think it's because people think I'm so great. I'm becoming so kerfuffled. But anyway, joking aside, that was a great conversation. We've come to the end of it tonight. We've kind of gone through quite a few number of things, as we generally do on the Facebook discussion. So thanks everybody for taking part and being involved. And of course, thanks to the people that create these posts that were shared to create these discussions. And thanks to everyone who's listened to us tonight and provided some comments that we've shared as well. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 30th of March, 2025, which is part of 555 Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is here every Sunday, UK time. And I look forward to doing again next week. So Thanks again, and good night, and over back to Jules.
Thanks, Harry. This doesn't take long. It's the meeting that we have for Autistic Radio out in the public and Autistic Association, the charity behind us. A quick reminder, we're here at 4:44 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, UK time, for a drop-in. Any podcast has the link. Our emails have the link. So people are invited to come and join us for the 4:44 without any ceremony. Text in to a conversation, or maybe even put your voice in there. That's normally the place that people start before they join us for the 555. So we have plenty of spaces in our studios for people to join us at the 555 when Harry's speaking, put the voice out there. But obviously, if people are willing to stay over on Facebook or LinkedIn or the other places that we're out there and comment, that's fine too. I often say how busy we are at Autistic Radio. Here's the evidence. Okay, guys, that's time. I can edit there and we'll end the stream.